This is page 47 in our notes. We're going to take these notes today. I do feel these are important. And some of my reviews later on, some of these terms come up and you will see them again next year. However, they will not be on my test this year. So I just want to put this in our notes so that you've seen it at least once this year. These go along with the EE standards. They are not on my test. But you're going to see them, so I'm just going to write, we'll see next year and later when we do some reviews. So I want you to have seen them a little bit. So these are applying, you need to apply properties of operations. And you're saying, I have no idea what that means. So we're going to make a little chart here to help you organize that. They kind of go with the expression and equation standards. So in the chart, I have 3 columns. The first one says property. I'm going to give you some room here. And then the next one says of addition. And then the next one is going to be of multiplication. So let me go ahead and trace the blue line here. So there's different properties. So you will see some of these. The commutative property, commutative, is all about the order in which you solve it. So you can see I underlined the O in commutative, and it's all about order. So what do I mean by that? I could say A plus B equals B plus A, meaning the order of A plus B is the same thing as the order of B plus A. You can switch the order around. Kind of like if I were to put numbers in. What if I put A and I make it 4 and B I make it 3? So if I add 4 plus 3, it's the same thing as saying 3 plus 4. The order doesn't necessarily matter. You can flip them around. This works with addition, with adding. Does that also work with multiplication? Does A times B, is that going to give you the same answer as if you took B times A? Yes. If you use the numbers as well, like 4 times 3, is that the same thing as 3 times 4? Yes. So commutative property is about the order, and with addition and multiplication, you can flip the order around and it works for either one. The next one is called the associative, which is about grouping. Associative, which is about grouping. And grouping, a lot of times you see with parentheses. So if I say A plus, and then I put the parentheses around B plus C, you would want to solve the B plus C first and then add A. Is that the same thing as if we group A plus B first and then add the C to it? And this may make more sense with numbers, but yeah, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if you group these and then add that one, or group these and then add that one. It works the same thing with numbers. Let's use the same numbers. 4, we'll use 4 for A, and then B we'll use 3, and for C we'll use 2. So is 4 plus the 3 plus 2 that you added together the same thing as adding the 4 plus 3 together and then adding 2? Yes. You can group them in different ways and you still get the same answer. That works with addition. Does it also work with multiplication? If you take A times and you group B times C first, is that the same thing as grouping A times B and then timesing it by C later? Yep, it's the same 3 things you're multiplying. Same 3 numbers. 4 times, what if you grouped 3 times 2 together? Is that the same thing as grouping 4 times 3 and then timesing it by 2? Yep. No matter the way you group them, you are still going to get the same answer. So commutative is order, associative is about grouping them. Like, do you associate these versus these first? The next property is called identity. When you hear identity, maybe you've heard of like identity theft, or your identity is who you are. That's like having your driver's license. So identity theft would be like someone got a hold of your driver's license or your information. It's not really good. Identity means that you keep the same answer throughout the problem. So identity with addition. If I have A and I'm going to add something to it and I want to remain with the same identity and end up with A at the end, what would I add to it? And if you're not sure, let's try it with numbers. Let's use 4 again for A. If I say 4, what would I have to add to it to remain and keep the same identity to continue to have 4? So with identity, you have to add a 0 in here in order to keep your identity A at the beginning and A at the end, or 4 at the beginning and 4 at the end. How does that differ identity property when you're multiplying? If I start with A, what would I times it by to have A at the end? Or if I start with 4, what would I times it by to have 4 at the end so that the identity never changes? You're not going to multiply it by 0 because 0 would make it 0. You need to multiply this by 1. A times 1 is A and 4 times 1 is 4. So you kind of keep the same identity here. The last one that I have is called the 0 property. The 0 property, there is not, it's not applicable, nothing applies for addition, but there is a 0 property of multiplication, so I want you to think about that. What would you do, or what would you multiply by if I need to have 0 at the end of my answer? So like if I have A or 4, what would I multiply those by so that my answers are both giving me 0 at the end? And that should be a no-brainer. If you want 0 at the end, you need to be multiplying by 0. So the 0 property kind of makes sense. You're getting 0. The last one is the property that we've talked a lot about, and that is the distributive property, which is on the test, and it's in our notes elsewhere, but I will rewrite it again here. The distributive property is probably the one that you're going to see a lot of for this test and continuing on again into next year along with these. This is the property where if you have A parentheses B plus C, it's the same thing as saying A times B in parentheses, and then you have to add it to A times C in parentheses. Remember, the distributive property works with addition and subtraction. It does not work over multiplication or division. And what do I mean by that? The sign right here in the middle has to be addition or subtraction. So how does it work with subtraction? Same look, but your sign changes. So A times B minus C would look like parentheses A times B. And over here you'd have your parentheses A times C, but instead of addition, you just change it to subtraction. And these are the properties that we've talked a lot about with this particular unit. They're not on our test, but I think you need to know.